Welcome, Chris, Ian, and Paul. Glenn, if you're there and we haven't caught you. Welcome to EMDRC for this evening's presentation. You're most welcome, and we've been looking forward to this for some time, especially during lockdown. We're most grateful for you giving up your time this evening. So a hearty welcome from EMDRC. For the members present tonight, the session will be run by Chris and Ian for the duration. Any questions through the chat window? Your audio and your video will be restricted until after the presentation to save on bandwidth. If you just bear with us, we'll get things underway very quickly. But Chris, I'd like to hand over to you for this evening. Welcome, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say, gentlemen.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Martin. Firstly, a quick sound check. You can hear me okay?
Yes, all good. Got your your screen pop up too.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much. And thanks everyone for having us along this evening. As Martin mentioned, my name is Chris Chapman, VK3QB. I'm the Treasurer of RASA and also an EMDRC member. This evening, Ian and I are going to be talking a little bit about what RASA has been doing since we last presented at EMDRC, which seems like a very long time ago now, that's for sure. I think it was in the latter part of 2019. As we all know, last year, none of us were getting out much, and this year's not looking much better. Okay, as Martin mentioned, it's probably easiest if we leave questions until the end, but if you do have anything that is relevant or you want to ask as we go, please use the chat window. I'll do my best to keep an eye on it, and we can answer questions as we go. All right. First of all, for those of you who may not have heard of us or weren't at the last presentation, the Radio Amateur Society of Australia. Who are we? A national representative organisation formed in early 2018 by 5 active amateurs. We're incorporated and registered nationally. We're really a virtual internet-based organisation, which enables us to keep our costs very, very low, and we still have the ability to get out to all of our members and across VK. We communicate regularly with ACMA and AMC, and we hope that we're bringing new and innovative thinking both to representation and also support for the hobby. Our website, vkradioamateurs.org, is where you can learn a lot more about us and what we do. And also it has links to all of the resources that we'll be going through this evening. Perhaps one of the other objectives that we had when we established RASA was to show that effective representation and support needn't cost a lot of money. So look, on that, I'll pass it across to Ian, who will just go through some of the achievements over the course of the last year. Over to you, Ian.
Oh, thanks, Chris. And it's just good to be here this evening. It would be nicer to be there in person, but that's the way things roll at the moment. So yeah, Ian Jackson, I'm the admin secretary of RASA, and I've been contributing to some of the websites that we have got up. So I wanted to just quickly go through broadly some of the achievements over the last 2 years, certainly, and we will come back to some of these with a bit more detail as we get going. But from the beginning, the emphasis has been to communicate with as many amateurs around the country as we can. We had been doing club visits, and in 2019 we managed to get around, I think, 13 different clubs. But since then we've been in a virtual mode, trying to make what contact we can. We have been quite successful in making contact with the ACMA and talking through the different issues, making representations. They have taken our representation seriously. We have looked a lot at topics like regulations and licensing, because that's been very much in flux over the last couple of years. So that has been very timely. We have implemented a website dedicated to the tracking down and reduction of interference for amateur radio. and that has been very well received. Once again, a little bit more about that coming up. The additional website that we put together was on regulations, which is kind of a dynamic piece of information. The regulations will change, their additions and takeaways over time. So we have a dedicated website which is accessible to anyone to look at what the current regulations are. And that will be updated pretty much in real time as the regulations change, which makes it better than a hard copy. We produced a guidebook to welcome new operators to amateur radio, and that's been very well received. It's available as a free download to anyone, not just RASA members. And we have put it on our digital bookcase, which allows you to sort of look at it by just flipping pages as you would with any other magazine. It's got a lot of information in, but yep, we shall come back to that. And following on from that welcome guidebook, we had some impact on new entry into amateur radio. That is, those who are studying, trying to get their license for the first time. It's quite a steep wall to climb up and to get a hold of all the information that they need at that time, and when they're in contact with an examiner. So we've got a welcome pack for new operators, and that's being distributed to clubs who want to pass that on to those going for exams. Once again, you'll find this a bit more interesting when we get to it. The magazine, which we've been able to produce every 3 months, is called QTC. It's an e-magazine. It's on our digital bookshelf, and we've been trying to fill that with as much topical content and educational content as we can. The other adventurous project that we had was to try and help new operators who have questions but don't know where to go for answers. And we launched a tech support service where new operators can actually ask those questions, and it's passed on to somebody who's got skill and expertise in those areas, and we seek to get answers for them. Sometimes it's indirect information, and sometimes we can pass material to them. And of course, in 2018, we launched into a conversation with the ACMA on the possibility of 2x1 call signs for those who are doing contesting. That's taken a long time to percolate. It's still a work in progress, but I think we're quite close now. The radio interference side of things, that has been a pretty big issue for us in the suburbs, and even in the country where there's a lot of other interfering sources around. And there hasn't been a lot of support for amateurs to be able to work with it. There's all sorts of LED lighting issues, there's solar inverter issues, it doesn't matter, it can be garage door openers. We're being surrounded by noise, and it wasn't getting any worse. The amount of assistance that's available through other sources, such as the ACMA, had been getting smaller and smaller at a time when we needed perhaps more. So the only way forward was self-help. And that is where the website QRM Guru has come into it. We needed to be able to do this ourselves, and we needed some uniformity so that when we approach, if we must approach the ACMA or other institutions for support, that we approach them in just the right way. And that brings us to QRM Guru, the website, and Chris is going to give you a brief demonstration of that. So back to you, Chris.
Okie dokes, thanks, Ian. Now, many of you will have been at the last presentation where we spoke about QRM Guru. It was launched at Perth Tech in March 2019, and we weren't really sure where it would go or how popular it would be or what it would look like. We really wanted to provide an online knowledge-based platform that would grow as amateurs contributed to it. So we've been really, really pleased over the course of the last 2.5 years. It really has garnered a lot of support. We've had a lot of feedback from people, and we've been able to help people as well. So I'll very, very quickly flick across to QRM Guru and just give you a very brief look at it. For those of you that haven't seen it, all right, you should now see my web page. QRM Guru is built on a knowledge-based platform, and as you can see, it's fairly straightforward, no bells or whistles. We have a number of, first of all, we obviously have a standard menu up here. We have an area here where you can ask a question. And then we have article categories here. I went over these last time. I won't dwell too much other than a very brief overview. There's an overview section here, announcements here, a number of articles around Australian regulations, case studies. Case studies really form the basis for, I think, a lot of inspiration for people when they have a look at what others have achieved. So far, we've got 20 case studies that have been sent to us by amateurs, both in Australia and overseas. I'll just click on case studies. It takes us to that category, and that gives you an idea of all of the different sorts of examples of case studies and scenarios where people have used the tips and techniques, some of them from QRM Guru and some of them sourced from other internet sources. There's obviously many sources of information on how to resolve noise on many different websites around the world. But what we found was there's nothing that brought it all together. So it doesn't matter where you are in the website, QRM Guru, you come back and you click on the logo up here, it brings you back to the home page. What I can do here is type in something like I might have interference. I think it might be coming from a garage door opener. I start typing in garage and it will automatically find the most popular article. And that's the power of the knowledge base engine that's sitting behind the website. I could also type in something like noise filtering or noise cancelling. And it will bring up documents, once again, based on their popularity. Over here on the right-hand side, we've got a link to the QRM Guru Facebook page and the most popular articles, the articles that are trending. Also, we have a list of the latest articles. So if you've come back to the site and you're not sure what might have been recently published, you can have a look at the list of latest articles here. As I mentioned, I'm wary of the time. We're moving along, so I don't want to go in and look at too much of this, other than to encourage you, if you haven't looked at QRM Guru, please go and have a look at it. And we're hoping that as a club, maybe we can do something with it at some stage, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I will just show you the QRM Guru process. A brief description, a process flow. Now, for many of us, we may not need this, but for those who maybe are new to the hobby or don't quite know where to start, a process flow diagram can help you work through it. By clicking on that, it opens up another view of the process flow diagram where you can actually click on a particular step in the process. So I might take locating the noise source. I click on that and it takes me to the appropriate step in QRM Guru. So how do I locate the noise source? So that's a little bit about QRM Guru and the website. One of the other things that we've been offering for probably the best part of, I think, a year now, Ian, maybe a little longer, is an online support service. So if you're struggling, maybe you don't know where to start, or you've identified your noise, but you don't know what to do about it, you can send us an email and that will go through to our online support engine that raises a ticket and we'll get back to you. Right, that's QRM Guru. As I say, I don't want to spend too much time on that because you can have a look at that yourselves after the presentation.
I might add that a lot of the options that you can click on within the QRM Guru website don't just lead to text descriptions. A lot of them link to videos which describe processes step by step. So that's an important part of it all, just the visual as well as the text path to follow.
Very good point, Ian. I'm going to just zip back and perhaps illustrate the videos. Ian has produced 12 educational videos, so you can have a look at those here. For example, using the QRM Kill Kit, there's a video.
With Nordic Track, the result.
That's advertisements kicking in from YouTube, where all the videos are hosted. But I think you all get an idea of how that works. All right, I'll go back to the presentation.
That wasn't me on a treadmill either.
All right. Just in terms of QRM Guru, in the last 12 months, it's had over 41,000 individual visitors from 168 countries and over 140,000 page visits. So we're really chuffed that it's getting a lot of coverage, and we've had quite a few requests for articles to be translated into other languages. There's one particular article and video that's been extremely well received, and all credit to Ian for this one, The Truth About Ferrites. The link to it is there, but it's been read over 16,000 times across 88 countries, and it was listed in DX Zone's Best Amateur Radio Links of 2020, which just a wonderful job, Ian. Really well done on that one. And if anyone hasn't read that or has any interest, please go and have a read of that article.
I see there's a question that's just popped up, Chris, if you haven't spotted it. It's just a one from Tom, BK3FTOMN, and it's just asking about what the status is of our podcasts.
We got a bit caught up with those, with COVID and various other workload issues. We're hoping that the podcasts will start again in the coming quarter, Tom. Back to QRM Guru. So really, look, it's all about the process of tracking down interference. And one of the things that's come out of the whole effort for Ian and I in particular, and I think everyone who we've engaged with, is it's more than just about solving your problems. It's also been a great educational experience and really takes you back to the underlying fundamentals of RF and what our hobby is all about. To assist in this process, one of the things we found was there was a lack of good ready access to some tools to help people identify QRM and resolve QRM. So we put together a number of kits, and Ian will just talk about them very briefly. But if you've done anything with QRM Guru, if you've resolved any of your issues, or maybe you haven't, please send us stories, because we put them up on the website, and those experiences, more often than not, are helpful to other amateurs out there. So if you've got any questions around QRM Guru, shoot your email off to feedback@qrm.guru. And a question from Dave. I wonder if it might be useful to do a piece on, is that a ferrite or an iron core in my box of bits? Ian?
That's quite a good question. And it probably is too, because you pick up something that's ring shaped and you look at it and you think, I wonder. So without a mountain of tech gear, it would be nice to be able to identify that. I might take that one on as some homework, because it is a fair question. You pick something out of a box or at the back of an old machine and wonder what it is. So maybe we should find out. Maybe there's an easy way of determining how useful it's going to be. So thank you for that one.
Great. Homework. That'll be fun. All right. Ian, do you just want to very, very briefly, when you've finished taking that note, run us through the various kill kits? Sure.
Well, the first kit that we put together was a starter kit, and that was done in synchronization with the launch of the QRM Guru website, where we built up a kit of essential ingredients if you're going to start to track down interference. And we've built it as a kit, and we've passed it on to several clubs as we had been meeting with them, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward. And I believe one has already been presented to EMDRC. But we would like to go further and drive that a little bit and get individuals or groups within some of the clubs getting out there and actually looking for some of these sources and building up expertise, which brings us to the middle kit, which was a very simple thing. There is a video on the QRM Guru site on how to build this simple non-resonant loop, which makes it effective from HF up to VHF. And for just a couple of bucks, you can build one up with a T-piece. And we have sold some kits with those ingredients. And it's kind of a bit easier if somebody has something that you know about and you can all talk about the same thing. So a standard design, and we have made those ones available. And likewise, the kill kit, because one of the first questions that come out from any conversation with dealing with interference is, okay, you've got a noise source, a modem, an LED light, you should be trying to clamp some of it and trying again, stop some of the feed lines picking up noise, and on it goes. And one of the first tools for that is a set of ferrites. So we produced a basic kit of ferrites with clamps and rings, and we make those ones available. I'm not going to do a big product sell here, but they are available on our website and you can see the ingredients. And we've sold about 2,000 pieces of ferrite over the last 2 years. So that has attracted a lot of interest. And I think it's helped a lot of amateurs around the country to lower the noise floor in the shack. Yes, that takes us past that little page, and over to you on VK regulations, Chris.
Good, thanks. One of the other things that came up in a lot of the questions we were receiving, and a lot of the commentary on social media and visiting clubs, was just how difficult it was to understand or interpret the regulations. So we thought it was time perhaps to write a plain English version of the LCD, make it into plain speak. And last year we put together the VK Regs info website in cooperation with Ron from the Radio and Electronics School. I'll flick over to that very briefly and show you what that's about. All right, so you can see the VK Regs info website. Gee whiz, that's loading slowly, isn't it? Reminds me of the old 300 baud modem days. It's structured very much around the things that make sense: operating procedure, regulations, electromagnetic radiation, band plans, Q codes, and the phonetic alphabet. So once again, I'm not going to click my way through everything here, but if you're either studying for an exam or you just want to go and have a look at what a particular regulation is or what it's all about in plain English, this is the place. Click on that, takes me to that particular section. And it has, what the guys have done is essentially taken the LCD and turned it into plain speak. We added a couple of things that I don't think are in the exam anymore. It's a long time since I've done the exam. I don't know if Q codes are there anymore, but there's a host of information there, and you're also able to download it as a PDF. So that's VK regulations, and that's something we put together last year, as I said, in cooperation with Ron and Radio Electronics School. Over to you, Ian, to talk quickly about the guidebook.
Sure. I might add that if I suddenly start breaking up, I apologise. I'm out at Druin West and my internet comes from about 5 kilometres away on microwave link through what might be driving rain tonight. So if I do drop out, I apologise, and it's atmospherics. It gets us all the time. But to the topic, the Welcome to Amateur Radio Guidebook. Yeah, this was an effort through quite a lot of contributors came together to build this document, and it was a pretty exciting release. And it takes about 15 different topics that are appropriate for the newcomer to the hobby and works through them. And it starts with things like ethics and how to operate and how to get on with others. Well, there's the list that's appeared on the screen. And the process of DX, the protocols, setting up some of the digital modes, or at least where to look if you need to know more, software-defined radio, and appreciation of some of these things, some safety aspects. There's a lot in there, and a lot of people who have been in the hobby for a while would still find it pretty handy to have kicking around. Once again, it's It's free as a download, as a PDF, or you can use the flip page version on qtcmag.com on the same shelf where the QTC magazine lives. The next item is the welcome pack. And I think Chris has got some information about that one. This is another fresh initiative and also very exciting. And I think you're going to be hearing a bit more about this over the coming year. Take it away, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. This was another one where we saw that a lot of people come out of the weekend exam or the weekend course, the exam, and they go home. And again, we were getting a lot of questions and club visits and social media commentary indicating that there was once again a bit of a bridge between getting the license and perhaps getting across some of the elements that are a part of our hobby. So we had a look at where those gaps were and put together a series of documents and information sheets to help bridge that gap. It's all online, and one of the good things there is if there's anything we want to add to it, or if anyone finds any errors or small things that can make it better, it's very easy for us to update it. But we do make it available as a hard copy portfolio. It gives examiners and people running the courses something tangible to give newcomers to take away. I won't go through everything that's there, but it includes the amateur radio guidebook that Ian was just talking about, and a number of other documents and resources that we hope are useful for newcomers. Ian touched on QTC magazine earlier. Hopefully many of you are aware of it and have been reading QTC. It's a truly digital e-magazine published quarterly online, which of course enables us to keep costs down and distribution costs. Pretty much as soon as we finish with production, it's available. A number of other benefits with an online magazine. Once again, I'll just flick over and show you. All right, qtcmag.com. Ian mentioned the website. You can access it either from our website or directly at that URL, qtcmag.com. As you can see, all of the issues of QTC are up there on the virtual bookshelf, as well as a couple of other documents we've produced, the VK Regs info, which is here, and also the Welcome to Amateur Radio book here. I find that these iPad, or if you've got a decent sized screen on your computer, we could just open one very, very quickly and have a look at it and how it works.
They do have embedded videos, which is a bit of a difference over the hard copies.
That's right. I'll very quickly demonstrate one. But the great thing with these e-magazines is, as Ian said, we can embed videos, but also all of these hot links. So as you're reading it, you can click on a hot link and it'll take you off to that particular website. It's also very useful for our advertisers by floating over an advertisement. If it's something you're interested in, it'll take you directly to their website. So it's a new look, it's a new feel, great feedback from the advertisers, and also really good to be able to follow links to websites. I'll just flick through some of the pages and see if we can find a video.
That cover page on this particular edition was supplied by Paul, VK3TGX. He took it from his tower when it was being regularly attacked by birds. It was quite a spectacular image, so it was a good one to get for this magazine. Very topical.
All right, here's one. I think I've remembered to turn on audio, John. Right, so here we are in an article reviewing Flex Radio. All right, so that just gives you a little bit of an idea that by having embedded videos, It just gives us another media that we can embed in the magazine. Of course, the downside is, as you can see there, if a video has been removed from YouTube, it's no longer available. So that's QTC Mag. It's published every quarter, and we're always looking for contributors. So if you have an interesting story to tell, or if there's something that you'd like to share with the AR community, please send us an email and we can look at including it in QTC Mag. If you're not real keen on that format, QTC is also published as a standard PDF, and you can access that from our website. All right, Ian touched on amateur radio tech support, or ARTS. One of the things, again, looking at and talking to amateurs, particularly new amateurs, was what happens when you've got a question or a challenge and you're not quite sure where to go, especially during lockdown when we can't be asking our friends at radio clubs. And sometimes social media isn't perhaps the kindest place to ask a question. We sort of thought, well, the internet is great for this. Everyone gets access. You can share stuff. It's free, and you don't necessarily need to be near another amateur to get the support of another amateur. So what we've done in the initial rollout of ARTS is we've limited the topics that we support to these that are listed here. So basic station setup and housekeeping, the basics of antennas to get going, particularly at home, the basics about feed lines, of course, QRM, most important, especially for newcomers and getting your station set up, band plans, getting on the air, and regulations. So a little bit like QRM Guru, we've built this on a knowledge-based platform, but it also has a ticketing system. So if there's something you can't find in the knowledge base, or maybe you've tried it and either it's not working or you've got questions, you can come back to Amateur Radio Tech Support and ask questions. Once again, I'll flick over just with a very quick demo. All right, Amateur Radio Tech Support. The URL is a little bit long and drawn out as we're still using the free version as we're piloting it, but it's amateurradiotechsupport.freshdesk.com. So once again, a little bit like QRM Guru, there's a spot here where you can ask a question, and down here we have the knowledge base divided up into sections. So getting started, basic station setup, HF antennas, QRM Guru, and getting on air. So, you know, once again, I can click on any of these and it'll take me to the particular document. All right, so we have a document on setting up your station. So, you know, getting things right from the start, some hints and tips, a link through to the Welcome to Amateur Radio guidebook, and some next steps. Again, I'm not going to get bogged down in this. I'd encourage you to have a look at Amateur Radio Tech Support. Click home at any stage and it takes you back to the home page. I can, if I'm either not sure what I want to ask or I want to find an article, I can start typing it in to the knowledge base question bar here, dipole. Okay, basic dipole. Take me to that document, basic dipole. And there's a document on building a basic dipole. At the moment, I can't recall how many documents we've got in Amateur Radio Tech Support, but there's quite a few there. And we always welcome support from anyone if they might like to write additional documents, and we can add those to the knowledge base. Now, the other thing that I just wanted to touch on was I've built a dipole and it's not working, or I've put up my antenna and I can't hear anyone and I don't know what to do. I can raise a ticket. I click on that. So I might put in, there's my email address. The subject is help with 2-meter contacts. And I might say, hi, I've installed a 2 metre vertical, but I can't hit my local repeater. Any advice? And that's almost an example of something we've received in the past. Thanks, Bob. And if I wanted to, I could attach a file, confirm I'm not a robot, submit that, and it has been submitted. So you get anyone that's used online help desks before will understand the concept and what's going on there. Behind the scenes, Paul and I, who check the incoming queue regularly, will see that ticket come in. We'll direct it to the most appropriate person to answer it, and they will get back to me with an answer. And quite often, we may well have 3 or 4 interactions with emails going back and forth between us and the person asking the question. So that's a very, very quick overview of amateur radio tech support. We're pretty excited about it as a concept, and we've been working to try to promote it through the clubs particularly, as it really does give particularly newcomers the ability to get some online support. Do you want to add anything to that at all, Ian?
That's a fair breakdown. There's a lot going into it. We've been very busy on this and other projects, and it's all coming together. I see we have a question up asking how we fund these services for the amateur radio community, and the simple answer is donations and memberships from those who have chosen to become members of RASA, the $10 per year fee. It all adds up. We are a pretty low overhead organisation. We don't have a physical presence that we have to maintain. We use our monies to fund the websites, and the technical online services, and a lot of volunteerism, and that's how we get it all together.
Yeah, and look, we've got our AGM. I think it's next week, isn't it, Ian? And we've just finished putting together the annual report and the financial report. And I think off the top of my head, if I take the big projects out, which are QRM Guru and something else we'll talk about shortly, our RBN, our annual operating budget is about $3,900 a year. And that's what enables us to put together all these websites. And of course, all of the back end, call them business management systems that we need to run as an incorporated association. Right, I'll push on with the presentation here. But interestingly, the revenue is probably, we get a little bit more membership subscriptions than we do in donations. So the donations are fantastic. Off the top of my head, I think donations last year, which was finished up at the end of August, was about $2,700, and membership came in at about $3,000. So that just gives you an idea of where we're getting our funding. And as Ian mentioned, our overheads are very, very low. Those of you who are members will be getting our annual report, if not tonight, tomorrow, and you'll see all the financials there. All right, I'm aware of the time. We'll push on. We implemented a reverse beacon last year. For those of you that aren't familiar with the reverse beacon network, I certainly encourage you to go and have a look. Reversebeacon.net. It's a fantastic network of beacons around the world, many of them at amateurs' houses, some at clubs, that are constantly scanning the spectrum, the bands, the HF bands, the VHF bands, the UHF bands, for both digital and CW and RTTY signals. And when they hear them, they report them. So if you are wondering where you're being heard in Morse code, you can either send a CQ or a test. Go and have a look at the RBN, and you will see where you're being heard. Very quickly, I'll flick over to a live demo. I'm assuming many of you will have seen this, but I've just come to the home page. This is the station, this is the beacon, the reverse beacon, and this is the station it's hearing. So I can put in RASA's beacon, which runs under the identifier VK3 RASA. It is the listening station. Click search, and these are the stations that is hearing at the moment. There's Luke VK3HJ on 160 metres, and he's booming into to West Gippsland, where the beacon is located. But you can very, very quickly come along if you're interested in signals that are being heard in and around probably Melbourne. Have a look at VK3 RASA, and that'll give you an idea. The bulk of the DX is coming in on 40 metres at the moment. I put the mouse over 40 metres and I can see all the 40 metre DX that's being heard. All right, once again, if you're not familiar with the RBN, I encourage you to have a look at it separately. There was an article in the December issue of QTC. So if you go and have a look at the December issue of QTC, there's an article on RBN there. Just like to take this opportunity to thank the FISTS Morse Code Club, the Australian and New Zealand chapter, who had a series of grants to help clubs implement RBNs. So that was great that they helped us financially to get that RBN installed.
It does very well, Chris. I think that from the location, it's a fairly low noise site and it picks up an amazing number of signals from around the world using an antenna, sort of no different than what most amateurs would be able to put up in their yards.
Very good. All right, we'll go on and talk very briefly about regs and the ACMA. We continue to meet with ACMA during COVID, as I think with everyone, both Zoom and the telephone was getting a good workout. And we had a number of meetings with ACMA over the course of the last year. The current topics that I'm sure those of you that follow the regulatory environment will be aware of, obviously the 2x1 contest call signs that, as Ian mentioned earlier, was a project we kicked off at the end of 2018. It was finally approved by ACMA in July 2019. There were some delays due to workload issues and foundation licensees getting access to 3-letter suffix call signs. And then, of course, COVID hit, which was an impact on a number of businesses. We are all familiar with the license review that's currently underway and the potential for us to move to a class license. 1 kilowatt for advanced licensees. We've been lobbying for that pretty much since day one, and ACMA advised that it would be included in the current overall license review. The same goes for full access to 50 to 54 megs for standard licensees. As far as future topics are concerned, on our radar, at least at the moment, of course, is a syllabus review. That's very overdue. So that's something that we'll continue to be focused on. And probably the best way to describe it is follow-up of anything as required, dropping out of the license review that really is taking ACMA's time at the moment. And I think we're all just waiting with bated breath for feedback on those particular items that are with the ACMA at the moment. I don't think there's anything else to talk about on that front, is there, Ian? For now, at least.
That covers it. There's a lot going on, but a lot of it moves slowly, unfortunately. So we can raise a topic and it might be a cycle of 12 or 18 months before it's resolved one way or another. So right. they come on the list and they stay there for a while and hopefully we get a good outcome.
Yep. All right. I'm just trying to push on because of the time. Our priorities for the upcoming year. We're going to continue to communicate with VK Hams. Most important feedback. So when we finish this presentation, we're really interested in your feedback and your thoughts. And if you're, don't want to bring it up this evening, I can see John has asked about the relationship between the WIA and RASA. Can I come back to that shortly, please, John? Education and awareness will continue predominantly through our e-bulletins, our email bulletins that go out periodically, and QTC. To keep everyone updated on what's going on with ACMA and regulations. Of course, we'll continue to develop and promote QRM Guru. We'll talk about a project that we hopefully members might be interested in supporting us with. We'll continue to push for the 1 kilowatt for advanced call signs, 2x1 call signs, contest call signs. We'll continue to work, hopefully predominantly through amateur radio tech support, to help FLs and newcomers. And I can see Tom's asked a question there. Just stand by, Tom. And Whisper next year, something that we're considering, and we'll be looking for feedback on this, but the rollout of a 6-metre network of Whisper stations, really to help people get a bit of a sense of how 6-metre propagation is going and when paths might be opening across the country. So that's something that we'd be interested in your feedback on. Okie dokes, question from Tom. What's happening with class licensing? Well, look, that's with ACMA, and I think, you know, us and the WIA and the bulk of the amateur community are waiting to really see what ACMA are going to come back with. I think the last communication was a week or so ago, and the response from ACMA really was that they're still working on it. A number of issues have floated to the surface and they're having to work through those. So we'll hear from them in, as Ian said, in due course. Next question relates to protection of frequencies above 2 metres. Other than lobbying ACMA, as everyone is very well aware, the commercial pressure on frequencies VHF and above is immense. And it's very much a use it or lose it. So all we can really do is continue to encourage people to use all of our bands. Where we're primary, I think that the risk is very low. Where we're secondary, there's probably not a great deal we can do other than illustrate that we're using the bands, and that the commercial pressure is able to be supported by other spectrums or other allocations of spectrum that are required. But certainly those of you who have been watching the press in the last year will have seen that telecos especially are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to buy spectrum, and we just can't compete with that. So I hope that answers your question, Tom. And of course, the last item there is the syllabus review. I think once again, those of you who have been following it will be aware that the syllabus review panel was disbanded, and there hasn't been any progress since. So that's another item that we have on the table with ACMA. All right, I might just come back to the question from John, the relationship, the vexed question, the relationship between WIA and RASA. As everyone is aware, there's no point pulling punches here. It has been a difficult time from time to time over the last 3 years. We've continued to try to work collaboratively and to reach out, because I think that we all share common goals, and all of us really are just interested in the betterment of the hobby and progressing the hobby, supporting those of us that enjoy the hobby, and encouraging newcomers. And the best way we can do that is to all work together. And I would extend it, John, even further than just the WIA and RASA. And I would say that really all of especially the larger clubs that have a lot of resources, whether they're financial resources or larger membership bases, really should be aiming to work together to a common set of goals. The relationship with the WIA has improved greatly. The new president, Scott Williams, has reached out to us, and I don't think it's a secret that, you know, I've spoken with Scott a number of times, as has Glenn, the RASA president, and we're having some really, you know, good discussions, and we talk also just about the hobby and what we're doing, and hopefully that will help in the weeks and months ahead to, you know, build some of the bridges and, you know, perhaps overcome some of the resistance and perhaps bad blood that has been there with some people over the course of the last few years. So I hope I've answered that question.
I might add, Chris, that the overriding motivation is for all of us to try and grow the hobby and to promote the hobby and to get the most out of it and to maintain the the conditions that we currently have at the very least. And that's not just the problem of RASA or the problem of the WIA. It's kind of a joint responsibility for every group in the country, and to a certain extent every amateur, to try and do their little bit. So we have our own style that we bring to the table and get the word out. And I know that the WIA have got their own style, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that there's not overlap, and it doesn't mean that we ought not to be able to work together. And I think that's pretty much where we are.
Yeah. And as I say, hopefully things are looking up for that relationship, particularly between ourselves and the WIA. All right, I'm not going to go over all these again. We presented these at the start of the presentation, but these are the things we've been focused on over the course of the last year. And as I mentioned, that's all with an operational budget of sort of around $4,000. And we really do thank all of our members and people who have made donations. Right, so we're to the close-up and the summary. If you've got anything that you want to go back and have a look at, it's all accessible from our main website, vkradioamateurs.org, and you're very welcome to send us emails, info@vkradioamateurs.org. We regularly send email bulletins to all of our members, and I think we've got about 120 clubs on our mailing list. Membership is just $10 a year. We're just at the renewal time of year at the moment. So if your membership's up for renewal, please go and have a look. All right, the last point there really is we want feedback. So I think that finishes up. I'll just ask Ian if there's anything you want to talk about. Ian, what's happening with 60 metres? Well, I think we all saw the announcement from ACMA recently, didn't we? They've said no, particularly Defence said that we had the potential to cause interference, and they weren't prepared to work with that. So at least for the time being, 60 metres is off the table. Is there anything you want to add, Ian, before we open up for questions?
Only that on QTC as a topic, our magazine, it's been out for a while now, and you've seen a few editions, I hope. If you haven't, certainly go and check it out. But I'd like two things. I'd like a little bit of feedback on what you think of the magazine, the format and the content style and the level at which it's pitched. It's easy to go too light or too heavy and lose interest at one end or the other. But we're trying to shoot for the middle, and I'd like to get some feedback to see if we're reaching that. And the other part I wanted to raise, if you've got some valid content of your own that you think might be worthy of spreading around, by all means, send something through to the same email, vkradioamateurs.org, and we'll have a look at it. And we would love to expand our contribution list to the magazine. That, I think, covers it from me. Chris?
Terrific. Okay. Well, we've gone a little bit over time. I hope it's been interesting. Ian and John will open it up for any questions.
Right. Just for everyone's information, I think you're unmuted now, or you can select to unmute if you're happy to progress with that, Chris and Ian.
Yep.
Please go ahead. I'll let you manage the next session. And hello, Tom.
Well, I say thank you for coming and giving a talk at the club tonight, virtually.
That's great.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for that comment on the ferrites too. I will have a closer look at that and see what we can do, because it's a reasonable question. And one of the things that I've been trying to do with that whole discussion is not necessarily go straight through to another deep analysis of ferrite materials, but more of how people can use them, make them more accessible and demystify them. And what you have asked goes to the center of that, I think, when people look in their junk boxes. So let's see what we can do with it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was aimed, Ian, just to be helpful, because I think many people have got a box of what looks like ferrites, but what the hell are they? And, trying to work out what they are with relatively, and I know it's not simple, but with minimal tools and bits and pieces to work out whether they're useful or not, might be a useful thing to do there, Ian. So that was my thinking of it.
We've got a great swag here, which we've we bring in and send back out. And that's actually been a win-win, which because it's helping amateurs and it's been helping us to contribute to some of our own projects as well. So that's very much a win-win when we've been able to distribute some of those items. But they're there and you can get them from anywhere. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're getting that noise floor down. Are there any other questions there?
Gents, I think you were going to cover off on one other item, weren't you, in relation to QRM? Or?
Oh, yes. Yes, well, if there's no other question, thanks for the reminder, Martin. One of the things that we just wanted to float by club members and maybe the committee as well is the possibility maybe of the club looking to put together a small project team who would work with QRM Guru. We'll provide a little bit of training and all of the hardware to provide an on-site service for amateurs struggling with QRM. Obviously, we need to wait for COVID restrictions to ease up. But if there's an amateur who is struggling to resolve some local QRM or perhaps doesn't know where to start, it'd be a great project, I think, for the club maybe to have 3, 4 or 5 members or half a dozen members who are sort of labelled as project team members or QRM assistance members who can go out on site with the DF loop with all of the tools and perhaps help that amateur work through their challenges. And we'd be pleased to provide obviously all the equipment and ferrites and a DF loop and all that sort of stuff. So we sort of thought we'd put that out to club members and see if there was interest, and if there is, we can liaise back through committee to see how that might play out.
It's a skill set, and that's something that I think we've both taken away from the exercise of launching QRM Guru. We've learned a little bit ourselves as it's gone along, and the more you pursue the process of tracking down of interference and the more examples you see, the more your skill base picks up. And that's something that I think a lot of amateurs could just benefit from, because it's interesting, it's on topic, and it's out there and it's not going away. I found myself on an industrial site in Brisbane between lockdowns, and we had some equipment that worked on 151 meg on one of the LIPD frequencies, and it stopped working, and we were scratching our heads over it. And I went back the next day with our DF loop kit and the T90 handheld and went wandering around their factory and found this huge radiation source from one of their internal security systems. We didn't know it was coming from. We put some ferrites in there and it went away, and suddenly the equipment worked again. Now, that was not amateur, but it was just outside the 2 metre band, and I reckon that anyone who tried to use 2 metres within QE of that factory would have had exactly the same problems. But that skill base that I learned from amateur radio helped me commercially, and it's something that clubs and individuals would benefit from, and it would be really good to get it going.
I've seen your question, Luke. We'll just see if there's any further commentary at all or questions on that idea.
Well, what about having like a state-based database of volunteers that are involved in this instead of 1 or 2 particular clubs?
Why not?
Yeah, it would be nice to have a working list of individuals even that are in a position to service a particular area or serve a particular problem. It gets a little bit hard when it overlaps onto private property. There's a degree of cooperation needed, but the more local expertise we can bring together, the better we are, and the better we're going to look in the community too.
And look, I think it's also about getting support from clubs and promoting QRM Guru and what we've been doing. And I know I think we've got 2 or 3 case studies from EMDRC members. And I mean, it'd be wonderful if we had that sort of support from some of the other larger clubs. But unfortunately, we're just not getting that at the moment. And that's part of probably the national-based issues that we need to overcome.
A good example of said interference, Ian mentioned with the LIPD stuff. Well, a good example of that is there's a big stretch of the Eastern Freeway where 2 metres is practically unusable.
It would be fascinating to get there and find out where it's coming from and do some door knocking, because every bit of interference that's out there, it's got a source. And if it's got a source, we ought to be able to find it. Take those two fundamentals away, and it doesn't mean that it's impossible just because you turn on the radio and the signal strength meter is sitting up there all of the time. We can do something about it, but we need the skill set to do something about it.
Part of the problem with the Eastern Freeway is that a large part of it might as well be underground.
It'd be nice.
No, it's a fact. I used to use it daily, and there are parts of it where you just can't source the local VHF or UHF repeaters because effectively you're underground.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know what you can do about that.
Not much, but I just mentioned it so that Tom realises that there can be other problems other than interference.
Yeah, but it's very clear because I'm talking as you head out and it becomes Peninsula Link, and there's this one spot where it's definitely open enough that I would think repeater coverage is not a problem.
Well, sometimes you need to look at the terrain, Tom, because it's probably behind Mount Dandenong from Ringwood area.
Good point.
It's an interesting conversation, isn't it? A topic that we could explore. So I think if members are interested and they'd like to reach out, they're more than welcome to drop a line to the committee, and we can put you in touch, or by all means.
On the QRM on 2 meters and driving around, something that we have probably all experienced whenever you drive through a set of strip shops in a small town or part of a settlement, suddenly it'll go berserk and something will be breaking mute on 2 meters. And a lot of the time that lines up with driving past an automatic teller somewhere, and you see an ATM and they tended to wipe out 2 meters. That effect has reduced a little bit, but they turned it out to be a lot of the oscillators that drove the CCFL lights on the edges of the screens of the ATMs. And they used to churn out a lot of crud on VHF. And a lot of them have reverted back to LED edge lighting, and the problem is reduced. But there's always a cause. And if you drive around and you hear it and it bothers you enough, maybe you can go back and get a bit closer to it.
One of the other things I just wanted to mention about QRM Guru, and that we've now linked it through to amateur radio tech support, it means that we've got a management system where we are gathering all of the requests that come in, and we can start to look at it and see commonalities. And that's sort of an extension of what you were talking about, Tom, I suppose, where if we're seeing particular issues come in either from a geographical location, or particular issues come in that are very common across the board. One of the issues that is very, very common is that people are jumping to a conclusion about what the noise source is without doing the proper investigative work. And I can see Ian nodding, because quite often we will get a ticket come in through ARTS from QRM Guru, where somebody says, look, I think that my noise source is X, Y, and Z. And we go back with some questions around how they came to that conclusion. And there really hasn't been a lot of investigation at all. And there was one just, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. A gentleman was living quite close to a Telstra exchange, and he was convinced the noise was coming out of the Telstra exchange, and how could he engage with Telstra to talk about resolving the issue. And after we did a little bit of analysis of the noise, or the noise source, and how he had tracked it down, it turned out that it was actually a power pole about 200 metres down the road. And he ended up finding that with his AM radio and a loop attached to it. So that's something, and that's probably a little bit about education as well, education and communication, that you really do need to follow the process. And the first step needs to be building a profile of the noise. What time of day is it? What frequencies is it covering? What's its lowest frequency? What's its highest frequency? Is it coming from a particular direction? Does it have particular characteristics? And once you've done all that, you can then take the DF loop and go out for a walk. Right, if there's nothing further on that, but look, separate to this, we will shoot an email off to the committee around the concept of, a project team to look at going out to help amateurs locally. To your question, Luke, the answer to that is there's been no changes in UK. Those changes were all in the UK. So no changes to radiation safety that I'm aware of here in VK. Right. Are there any other questions, comments, feedback? As Ian mentioned, we really want feedback. That's very much what drives the bulk of the work that we do and where we put our energy. So if you've ever got any thoughts and not bringing them up this evening, please feel very welcome to send us an email.
The biggest problem, though, is it's okay if we can identify the source, but if the landowner tells us to go and get, what do we do as radio amateurs apart from complain to ACMA and potentially have nothing done?
Well, there's an interesting answer to that. I mean, in the short term, you can also indicate that it's in their own best interests to resolve it, because there's a fair chance that the interference that they're causing to everyone else is screwing up their own Wi-Fi and their internal performance will improve if they resolve the problem. That's something you can bring to the table. Ultimately, we have had an undertaking from the ACMA that regardless of whether we stay with an apparatus license or we revert to a class license, they have indicated that the overall protections that are in place have not largely changed. That doesn't mean that they're going to be able to send lots of people out tomorrow to solve that problem, but it does mean that they are ultimately still the guardians of the spectrum. And if we can present enough information in a cohesive way, they will react. But if we just ring up and say, hey, we've got a problem, can you help us work it out? They haven't got the resources and probably not the interest to get involved. So we can
and look, we've had some emails sent to us that people have sent to ACMA. You know, I've got S9 noise on 40 metres. I think it's my neighbour. Please send an RI out. You're not going to get a response to that. I think one of the other things, Tom, that this is illustrated, and certainly from my personal experience, and that is to be on good relations with your neighbours. And that really means from, day one, building a good solid relationship. So if you do end up causing interference, or in my case, I was getting interference from the neighbour, they're going to be more receptive to getting involved with you cooperatively to resolve the problem. If you've got an aggressive neighbour or a neighbour who's not interested, well, it's either going to take more work, Tom, it's going to take longer, or ultimately you might need to live with it.
Tom, you can invoke some more self-interest. You can also say, like we have had working examples where interference has been tracked down to a garage of a neighbour where a battery charger has been about to catch fire. And they were most pleased that they got that knock on the door, and without that, this little thing would have been cooking it away at 150 degrees. And they cut the cord and threw it in a bin instantly. So when there is a big interference source, you can. It's everyone around who can benefit. A big source of interference is a sign that something's not right. And that's something that sort of cuts across politics and perhaps neighbourly squabbles a little bit.
I think there's some very good points there, Ian, and I'll just call out, you've probably got a rain shower coming through your area or our area.
Probably mine. I'm hearing a bit of rain on the roof.
That's very good. Well, I think at this stage, I think we're about done for this evening. We're mindful of your time and your generosity in coming and talking to us tonight on Zoom, at least without having to leave the comfort of your own homes. But certainly much appreciated, and I think it's given the membership food for thought going forward. Certainly your investment and contribution to amateur radio is to be commended. I think the resource pool that you've built and the relationships that you're continuing to build are going to pay dividends for us going forward. So I'd just like to thank you on behalf of the club for your contribution and your presentation this evening. Well done, most enjoyable.
Thank you, Martin, and it's kind of you and EMDRC to have us along. That always have been a very strong club and shown a lot of interest in what's going on around the country, and I think that we all come away a little more informed both ways when we get together.
Indeed, indeed. All right, gents, you're most welcome to hang around for as long as you like. Actually, I'll leave that to your call, but generally now we'll throw the meeting open to members to socialise. We've got no business for the night. We've sent out our newsletter during the week, so that's got pretty much everything that the committee wants to say. But generally now we'll have an open chat session and a bit of a social occasion. So more than welcome to hang on and stay as you wish. Thanks again. Much appreciated.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Martin.